Mezec, unelected members of the states. Let's start with the Dean. It's been a bit of controversy about that just lately. You've said if you're re-elected, you will bring a proposition to remove all religion from the states. Why do you believe religion should be separated from government?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I should say is that it is something I absolutely believe, and what I think probably the majority of the population believe is that religion and politics, in their institutions at least, should be separate. It's not anywhere close to the top of my list of priorities. I am much more interested in talking about issues like cost of living, 0 hours contracts and what have you. But it's something that's come up recently that Christianity is a really important part of Jersey culture, but we know now that increasingly there's other aspects that are quite big in Jersey culture now. We've got a reasonably growing Muslim population in the island. We have a huge amount of people in the islands that don't subscribe to any religion at all. And I think if Jersey's meant to be inclusive and tolerant, it isn't right for one particular religion to have precedence above the others.
Well, I suppose they argue that he is representing the vast majority of all other religions. Mm-hmm. Do you buy into that?
No, because within all religions there's a huge diversity of opinion. The obvious one recently was the gay marriage thing. I've got a lot of friends who are Christians who are absolutely in support of gay marriage, and they would say that they're in support of it simply because of their faith. They believe that if you're really following Jesus' teachings about equality, etc., then that should be something you believe in. Now, obviously there's difference of opinion and that's legitimate, but with only one church representative, you only get the official party line. Because he's top of the church in Jersey, that's the only line you get. You won't hear it from the grassroots section. You won't get ordinary Christian views from people who might not have a position in their church but who go every Sunday and who believe and worship. You're only getting the top view, and so that's not right in a democracy.
No, going by that, if you like, so when he does speak in the States, he is influential.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah. Well, since I've suggested that perhaps he shouldn't sit in the States, there has been a bit of a backlash. I got accused this morning on the radio of being uninformed, which was something I thought was quite funny, given that the Dean is my colleague and I see what he does in the States every time I'm there. I see it probably much better than some of these other people do. If it weren't such a big deal, then people would be happy to just get on with it and do it. But to those who support him being there, the reason they want him there is because they know he does have an influence and they want to keep that influence.
Rather like, would you say, part of a lobby group, the one that I think it's Gavin Ashenden that said that you were uninformed this morning. Mm-hmm. But isn't he and others like him just part of a lobby group, and the Dean is their representative?
Yeah, sure. It's a lobby group like many others potentially could be, but it's one that for some reason has an automatic seat in the States. There's nothing wrong with lobbying. The party I represent, Reform Jersey, originally was a lobby group before it became a party, and I used to try and lobby states members on issues of democracy. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's healthy in a democracy that should be happening, and there's no circumstance under which I'd want to silence Christians who want to express their point of view. I think that's entirely fair. But for it to be given an automatic seat in the island's parliament, that's the important thing. You know, there aren't single chamber parliaments around the world that dedicate a specific seat to the representative of one religion. It's sort of overbalanced, and that's not right.
All right, so the Dean, or the office of the Dean, shall we say, gets paid in the region of £26,000, funded for by the taxpayer, to perform his duties, including sitting in the States. Mm-hmm. If he's removed from the States, should he take a pay cut? Where would that money be better spent? The £26,000 he gets now, and if he is removed, would that be a 20? You know, where would the £26,000 be better spent?
Well, if the pay is going to go down, the £26,000 would be better spent anywhere, really. I wouldn't necessarily be against it being donated to charities that are doing good work. Some of those could be Christian charities. Next week in the States, we're debating giving some money to a charity that helps people coming out of prison integrate into society. I think that's a brilliant thing, and we should be supporting that. But then it's not right, I think, for a church representative to be getting taxpayers' money when there are many taxpayers who disagree very strongly with what he might say in the States. The equal marriage thing is one. If I were a gay person, I wouldn't be very happy about my tax money going towards somebody who was using his position to influence a debate against the way I wanted it to go. Now, you can say that deputies, senators and constables may also advocate for things that you don't necessarily want, but they're elected, or sort of elected. We'll talk about that.
Come on to that.
We'll talk about that in a bit. But at the end of the day, if I'm saying things that the majority of my constituents don't like, they can throw me out. Who can throw out the dean? No one can. So if you're unhappy about what he's saying, you don't have a choice.
Well, because I want to just get onto that as well, taxpayers paying for his wages, because this has always been a big question of mine. I was brought up in the church, you know. I'm not religious in any way anymore, but I did take my communion, I did take my confirmation and the rest of it. From what my learning is, hasn't Jesus, who, for the want of a better phrase, was anti-establishment, now become the establishment? That's to say, the church taxes us. We pay his wages, and it taxes us in our parish rates. We've got to pay for the church. So, in our rates, and by paying the establishment also closes ranks in order to protect the dean over the way that, for example, the way he handled the HG debacle, when in theory, going back in years, when the establishment crucified Jesus, but right now they're rallying around to protect this man who is, like I say, taxing us with our rates. And where's the word of Jesus gone? Where's the teachings of Jesus gone?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I think some states members consider him to be beyond criticism because of his title. Now, in a democracy, I don't believe anybody at all should be beyond criticism. When I say something people disagree with, I'm subjected to loads of criticism, and that's absolutely fair. It's what I get for being a politician. I'm fine with that. But certain people, because they hold a title, don't get criticism, and that's wrong. But I think the point you make about Jesus in particular is really important, because I've got lots of friends who are Christians, and Jesus was anti-establishment. They seem to forget this message. He was executed. Well, back in those days, you weren't executed for no reason. You did it because you were you either committed a crime or you were an agitator. You were anti-establishment. You were causing trouble, and that's what Jesus did. He was offered, political influence, and he rejected it because it wasn't right. He, was standing for something different. And really, that example seems to be completely lost in the church, which is now established, when back then the church meant something completely different. It meant campaigning essentially about issues of social and economic justice, which is, I'm myself, I'm not a Christian, but I consider Jesus to have teachings which every politician really should listen to. It was Jesus that said that sooner will a camel pass through a needle's eye than a rich man enter the kingdom of God. Well, that's been lost somewhere along the line when you look at how much wealth some of these institutions have. Well,
I mean, look at the deanery for us. That's worth about £1 million. I'd say that the dean himself is on. I think he gets 3 sets of wages, not only the £26,000 from the taxpayer. So, I suppose the point, I don't know if you're in agreement with it. Really, what are you saying? The same as what I'm saying here is that the dean has become, he's a conformist, and is exactly the opposite to what Jesus was.
Sure. I mean, some of the speeches I've listened to the dean give, and I don't want to personalise it around this specific dean because it would go the same, I think, for every dean. There occasionally have been debates in the States where I've listened to his contribution, and sometimes he makes good contributions. That's fine, but I sometimes feel like he might be holding back on certain things when we're talking about perhaps spending money on something that's going to help the most vulnerable in the island. As far as I'm concerned, those are the people who I want to represent the most, people who are hard done by, people who don't have the money to look after themselves. I want the government to be doing more to help them. And I sometimes feel like because the official government line in Jersey is that we don't have enough money to be engaging in these social projects that we desperately need to. To deviate from that when you're part of the established government church is difficult. You're not going to speak out about the establishment if you're part of it. And that was the opposite of what Jesus stood for, wasn't it?
That's what I was going to say. Jesus would have spoken it. In fact, he got crucified for speaking out.
Precisely.
Maybe the dean's learnt by Jesus to keep his mouth shut.
Well, yeah, exactly.
We'll wait and see.